In 1859, the state of Queensland in northeast Australia was founded, and in 1911, the Northern Territories were established. At about that same time, they were starting to discover opals in Australia.
This was the beginning of the Queensland opal fields. It was the beginning of Australian opal.
Kyabra Hills, 1889. White Cliffs, 1890. Lightning Ridge, 1903.
We're in Cooper Pedy. At Cooper Pedy, they discovered opals. Actually, a young boy discovered opals in 1915. Well, the rush was on after that, and everybody came out here. In this neighborhood, for example, there are now something like 250,000 mines that are scattered around the countryside. In any event, that's what made Cooper Pedy important. And it's the mining that makes Cooper Pedy different. You see, the miners discovered that out here in the desert, it was a lot more comfortable to be down in the mine than it was to be on the surface. The temperature was a lot cooler, and it's very, very hot and dry here. And as a result of that, they started building their homes in old mine shafts. I'm staying in the underground motel. Yes, this room is underground.
Young Willie Hutchison certainly had reason to be pleased with himself. He had just discovered the richest opal field in the world. But thousands of miles away across distant continents, men were gathering for war. For the next 4 years, only a handful of miners could be found chancing their luck in the new field. After the war ended in 1918, there was a rush of men to the diggings. These men had spent their time during the war digging trenches and dugouts, and were used to living underground. So, faced with a lack of timber, they simply dug into the side of hills for shelter. The Aborigines who passed through the area noticed this phenomenon. They coined a name for it, Cooper Pedy, which means white man's burrows, the name that would become famous as the opal capital of the world.
Today, 90% of all of the opals in the world come from Australia, and 80% of that 90% come from Cooper Pedy. It's mined just in this little area here. Those mounds that are off there in the distance, that's the spoil or mullock that comes up out of the mines. The mine is begun by drilling a vertical shaft. That shaft is only a little bit bigger than a man can possibly get down, and the landscape from the air is marked with those shafts. And they're not particularly well marked. The result is you have to be careful not to fall down or drive into one of them. That machine out in the distance there, sort of to the left, with the big barrel on the end of it, that's a giant vacuum cleaner. And that big barrel is sort of the vacuum cleaner's bag. As it gets full, it automatically dumps the mullock onto that pile that you saw. Right now I'm down in one of the old opal mines. This one happens to be inside the city of Cooper Pedy, and you're no longer allowed to do mining inside the city. But this particular mine is quite old, and it's been transformed now into a museum to show you how the mining used to be done. This is what opal looks like when you find it in the mine. Now, opal is basically glass. It's made of silica. And the way that it's created is water gets hold of silica and drops it down through the earth a little at a time until it finds a void. And in that void, the silica builds up into opal. Opal formation was caused, in part, because this part of Australia was under an inland sea, as most of Central Australia was at one time, back in the age of the dinosaurs. Because fossils are formed in much the same way, when some of the dinosaurs died and fell to the bottom of the inland sea, their bodies were not just fossilized, they were opalized. This one happens to be of a plesiosaur named Eric. Eric is now in the Sydney Museum. There happens to be a low ceiling, so you need to watch your head. Although mining operations are no longer going on inside the city limits of Cooper Pedy, opals are still being found within the city limits. And the reason is because although mines can't be dug in the city limits, houses can be. And frequently, when someone is adding an addition onto their house, they'll run into thousands of dollars worth of opals, often enough to pay for the room addition or even the house. But in any case, a welcome addition to income. And of course, houses aren't the only thing being built underground. There are businesses of various kinds and even churches that are underground. The reason for that, of course, is because there's no air conditioning or heating required under any circumstances for underground houses. The temperature remains quite constant. The most important church, the best decorated probably in the neighborhood, is the Serbian Orthodox Church, and that's the one that we're going to next. It's larger than most of the other churches, although there is also Greek Orthodox, Anglican, and Roman Catholic churches built underground. After the churches or any building has been dug out, the interior then is coated with a varnish. The reason for that is because it adds a certain amount of luster, but even more importantly, it tends to keep the dust down. In addition, you're about to see the ceiling of the church, and the ceiling here has those nice little scallops on it. And those scallops were naturally created by the kind of digging machine that they used, which was circular. The next home that we're going to is Crocodile Harry's, and the fact of the matter is that Crocodile Harry was very eccentric, and his place has become a tourist attraction. Harry died a couple of years ago, but his place has appeared in many movies, including the Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and various others.
This is a stick-up! Anybody moves, and they're dead meat! Oh, I think we're all dead meat!
This is from near the end of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And it's this particular scene that leads you down into Crocodile Harry's place. Max is just now escaping from Bartertown, and the entire town is on his heels. Max and his crew are following the pilot's daughter down into a shaft, and it turns out that the home that the pilot is living in happens to be Crocodile Harry's home.
Dad, within me! Dad, within me!
Okay, son.
Quick,
Okay.
get in the plane! Quick,
Okay,
get in
darling.
the plane! I warned you, Dad!
Follow me.
This way.
You!
Me?
You. It's your lucky day.
It is?
Uh-huh. You got a plane.
I have?
It might just save your life.
You will?
Harry says that he was born as Arvid von Blumenthals, a Latvian baron who was forced to leave his country after World War II. I suspect he had been fighting on the side of the Nazis. He also claims to have worked as a crocodile hunter in northern Australia before coming to Cooper Pedy to look for opals at around 1975. Harry not only had a reputation as a crocodile hunter, but he also had a reputation as something of a ladies' man and a prodigious drinker of alcohol. The alcohol eventually is what caught up with him. He ended up with cirrhosis of the liver. I expect that Harry came to Cooper Pedy largely because crocodile hunting was outlawed at about that time back in the 70s, so that the crocodile population could regenerate. The fact of the matter is there are some photographs of Harry and his crocodile experiences, and Harry also appears to be the origin of the Crocodile Dundee story. At the time, Paul Hogan had a talk show, and he had invited Crocodile Harry to be one of his guests. And his experiences with Harry was enough to get him started on the Crocodile Dundee story. We're going now out to what's called the dog fence. The dog fence is the longest continual construction in the world. It stretches about 3,300 miles. It begins in Queensland but ends in South Australia. The idea is that sheep have difficulty defending themselves from dingoes, but cattle, which grow in the north, don't have quite the same level of difficulty, and so this is a sheep protection device, and it's said to be fairly effective. Of course, the primary reason that I went to Australia, however, as interesting as all of this mining stuff is, has to do with the animals.